Okay, hello and welcome to our weekly Wednesday night live stream. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that I try and do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are new here, welcome, and if you are returning here, welcome. And real quick, before we jump into things, I just wanted to mention for those of you that have been asking about the podcast or um, I guess just things in general about the podcast is up and going. So if you're interested, you can find me um, kind of across any podcasting station over at Thrive After Abuse, across the internet for podcasts, website, you name it. So that is a thing. Critical mass is here. He says, hello, I'm early for once. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Jack is here. Huffle Mom is here. Three Ami. Donna, keep your distance. I have to say, keep your distance. When what's the first comment to pop up in the chat tonight? And it says, keep your distance, please, is the screen name. And I should also confess, I just woke up from a nap. So I'm still waking up. But I thought you were telling me that. And I thought, oh, well, wait a minute. No, I'm not anywhere near you. I don't know. I was very confused for a second. Let's see. How is everybody doing? Corey, thank you, says Dana. I love your show. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. We're working on it and dedicated to continual improvement, no matter how small. So we still have a long ways to go, but we've come a long ways too. So that's good. I was going to ask you guys. I feel like there was a few things I was going to mention. I apologize for last week. That was very strange. Zoom just stopped working at the tail end of the live stream. So I apologize for the abrupt end. That was just very strange. And let's see, that was that. As long as we don't have any issues tonight, I will do a guided meditation at the end. And what else was I going to? Oh, I was going to ask you guys about anxiety. I'm switching topics here. Again, my hamster on the wheel is just getting warmed up. In terms of anxiety, for those that have dealt with it, what has worked for you? It's something that I struggle with periodically, and I know that it's a fairly common thing, especially these days with COVID stuff. A lot of people are really struggling with anxiety. And yeah, so I'm curious to know what strategies, or can you recommend any books or yeah, anything at all that has helped? I would be curious to know. And also, if you weren't on I guess yesterday, on the Tuesday live stream with Angie and I, yesterday, we kind of decided, well, I feel kind of bad. I volunteered her and myself at the last minute. We're going to start doing something. And I'd like to continue that over on my channel as well, where we have people post different aha moments that they've had, or insights, or yeah, I think insights gained or clarity, anything along those lines from the video that you're watching. So if you're getting, and it doesn't have to be something that I say or that Angie says. It could be a discussion that's happening in the chat. It could be something, a certain way somebody phrases something, and it just hits that sweet spot for you. You're like, oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Those kinds of things. If you could post them down in the comments, for now you can post them in the chat if you'd like, but also to post them in the comments after these videos go live, I think would really be helpful for new people that are coming to these chats to hear just kind of the aha moments and yeah, insights of others. Okay, so in terms of anxiety, Olive Juice says St. John's wort tea on a daily basis for at least a month straight worked wonders for my anxiety and depression. Interesting. And Nordic Naturals Ultimate Omega Fish Oil. And then Critical Mass says I have two diagnoses, autism and ADHD. I've been dealing with stress most of my life, anxiety attacks, panic attacks, etc. Niacin was a game changer for me. Interesting. Interesting. I think I've heard you talk about niacin before, and I keep meaning to look into that. I wonder what it is about niacin that's so helpful. Critical Mass also says, I recommend anybody struggling with anxiety to look up Abram Hoffer. Okay. And that's a good reminder, Jack. He also says, um, take into consideration anyone taking pharmaceuticals, uh, like prescription medications, St. John's wort, could wreak havoc with other psych meds and or supplements. And this is true. So thank you for adding that. Supplements in general, it's really important for your doctor or whoever your prescriber is to know everything that you're taking. Vitamins, minerals, supplements, any of that. Okay, let's see here. Jack, who is Nance? Corey asks, are we talking about anxiety after narcissistic abuse? Could be, or just in general, anxiety in general. And Olive Juice adds, she says, yeah, I was just stating what has worked for me. Yes, absolutely. With everything in life, right? It's sort of like, okay, your mileage may vary, um, but it's really helpful to know what kind of what has worked for other people. I know some people are big into like mindfulness, being in the moment. Some people guided meditations. Um, trying to think of kind of examining some core beliefs about if there are some core beliefs surrounding that anxiety, or if it's more of a kind of random fight or flight thing that kicks in. You know, sometimes it can be kind of just this catastrophizing type thinking that can just snowball. So it can help to bring awareness to that and try to at least slow it down. Okay, that's an interesting question here. Okay, thank you, Jack, for that clarification. Um, Ava says, are narcissists avoidant attachment style? What is the pinnacle point that differentiate the two? Oh boy, there's, oh, that's a great question. And it's a big answer. So I would guess that there's a significant amount of overlap there. Um, mm, my guess would be that kind of certain cluster B personality personalities in general um, tend to fall in either the um, the insecure attachment style, anxious, avoidant, or avoidant. Um, the other ones, kind of borderline, histrionic, and I think borderline and histrionic tend to be more anxious, um, possibly anxious avoidant. Um, Narcissists and those with antisocial behavior, I think it depends. I would say somewhere between anxious and avoidant. So some of them, it just depends. Like some of them, because everybody's different, right? Even within a diagnosis, you can have a wide range of kind of from mild to severe, um, a wide range of insight as to whether or not the person is kind of to what degree of awareness they have of the different issues they have going on, and differing degrees of willingness to want to work on those. So a lot of their behavior can come across as avoidant to us, um, but I'm not sure if it's necessarily um, a defense mechanism as a way to keep themselves safe. I think it can be more of just, okay, well, let me back up. So you have with avoidant attachment style, you have kind of this, it's a spectrum, again, like anything else, a continuum, where you have this avoidant as disinterest in a relationship with others. Those people tend to not get into relationships. They're just not interested. Um, these are the people that kind of fill up their time doing other things. Working tends to be a big one. So they're just not that interested. Relationships come across or feel to them like they're more trouble than they're worth. And that normally comes from, being hurt enough times, or just not ever seeing a healthy, happy relationship, or being in a healthy, happy relationship. So it's that kind of feeling of, oh, I'm not missing out on anything. There's no desire really there. So those people don't get into relationships. Those that do every now and again kind of put their toe in the water, so to speak. A person can be avoidant and not narcissistic, and not, for sure, not abusive. They can just be kind of disinterested or indifferent. Same with when you see a lot of like that push and pull type behavior of the I hate you, don't leave me kind of thing, that the don't leave me part of that tends to speak more towards the anxiousness. Um, with pathological degrees of narcissism or antisocial behavior, I don't know, and I would be curious to know if there's studies that have been done on this. The I hate you, don't leave me kind of thing, I really don't know if it's coming from a place of um, like attachment or healthy bonding, and if instead it's coming more from a place of power and control. Because normally with those two personalities, it's power and control. There isn't any sincere um, bonding of any depth. So yeah, so there's lots of overlap between these things. I don't know. I'll have to dig into that and kind of see. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up here. Right. Mr. Suds doctor says narcissists cannot attach, period. That's the whole problem. Right. Yes. Yes. And the avoidant attachment style generally doesn't attach. So that tends to go hand in hand. that the hybrid anxious avoidant, like I was saying, I think, just from what I've seen, that anxiety, that inability to let go, that obsessiveness, that stalking behavior, the hoovering, the nonstop harassment, that kind of stuff. I really, it might come across as anxious or anxious avoidant, but I really think there is a strong case that could be made that it's not. It's kind of in its own realm of they're feeling anxious about their need for power and control, not necessarily about this other person leaving, if that makes sense. Okay, let's see here. Oh, wonderful. Corey says, just knowing to be free from the bondage of narcissistic abuse helped me. I have a lot of gratitude every morning I wake up, gratefulness and peace of mind. That's wonderful. Yes, isn't it so wonderful to just have the clarity, have the information that we have now, like that level of clarity and validation, and to feel really grounded within ourselves, and to realize we don't have to live like that. Like, you don't have to put up with it. Don't need that. Don't want that. Don't need to stick around and try to fix it or help or do any of that. And it's so freeing. I was talking to somebody yesterday about her relationship or previous relationship, and she was saying, oh, she was describing kind of what it felt like to walk on eggshells for her, and that she was, whenever she had an issue or a concern of any size to bring up, she would normally sit on it for a few days because she knew she knew that if she brought it up, it was her boyfriend at the time was not, it was going to lead to a fight. He was going to become very defensive. He was going to spin things around and then start attacking her. And then nothing would end up being resolved. And if anything, she'd be left apologizing for things that she either did a long time ago or she doesn't remember doing, or she's pretty sure that never happened. And so she had an issue. She'd sit on it for a couple of days, and then she would start writing out all of his potential comebacks and ways that he could spin things around. And she would just kind of map out her case, basically. And when she was describing it, it just, man, it was just like this pit in my stomach of, I remember having to do that. And how incredibly awful that feeling is, and how confusing it is, thinking, okay, I'm the one with the communication problems, so I need to really just improve my communication. And if I can just get it through to them, if I can just communicate more effectively, then these conversations just won't go into a ditch like they have been. And the reality is that's not the case. And some people are very antagonistic and enjoy a good fight, and they just want to wrestle around in the mud to prove themselves right and to prove you wrong, and they cannot accept any criticism whatsoever, and it's just absolutely exhausting. So yeah, and anyway, so her and I were talking about that, and the relationship she's in now is just, it's so much better. Night and day better. And we were just kind of chuckling about the differences between the two, and how now, with her current partner, and they've been together for a handful of years, if she has a concern, she doesn't have uh, she doesn't sit on it for 3 or 4 days. She doesn't have to map out her argument. She doesn't have to go to these great lengths because they have effective communication. She can bring something up, and if he has concerns or doesn't agree, he says it. They're able to stay on the topic, and they're able to effectively get things resolved. And she's like, it's so nice because there's not that level of eggshells. He can bring stuff up, you know, she's like, yeah, well, he brings things up, and if it's, and then I bring things up, and it's comfortable. There isn't this vindictiveness or passive aggressiveness or aggressiveness or any of that. It's just able to get resolved. So it's so nice to have peace. That's just the bottom line here. It's just so nice to have peace in our life and to realize uh, we don't have to settle for anything less. And so why do we? I think that's probably the big question. Why do we? What messages were we operating from that we thought we had to settle for less, or that having ongoing chaos was somehow reasonable? So, yeah. Uh, let's see. Uh, okay, back to anxiety. Olive Juice says also running helped a ton. Running enough to the point of runner's high kicked all anxiety out of the window for about 12 hours each time. Although it's not always easy to achieve a runner's high. Yeah, very cool. I like that. That makes sense. Just getting that energy out in the form of something healthy in the form of exercise. Corey says, after narcissistic abuse, a lot of self-care and therapy and channels like yours helped a lot. That's wonderful. What do you think was helpful about those three things? Blue Moon asks, do narcissists tend to string you along, saying that they're going to do something but never do? Again, it's one of those things, like there's overlap there, right? So some, narcissists do tend to string a person along, but not every person that strings someone along is necessarily a narcissist. So um, there can be overlap there. Narcissists tend to promise, um, they tend to promise things and not follow through because it gets them out of consequences. Oh, I promise I'll change. I promise I'll stop drinking. I promise I'll stop cheating. I promise I'll, if you can even get that. Generally, you can't even get that. It's the denial, it's blame, it's, they spin things around. There's no sincere, there is no accountability 9 times out of 10, sincere or otherwise. There's just, like, you don't even get that. So, but at the end of the day, so let's revisit this question. So do narcissists tend to string you along? Regardless of whether or not they are a narcissist, saying you're going to do one thing and not following through is still a problem. I am notorious for doing this, and I hate that so much. And it's with very good intentions when I promise. And it's due to a wide variety of reasons as to why there's no follow up. So it's oftentimes I forget, or I lack the systems in which to remember things. And that's a lot of the ADD kind of stuff. So um, if you're going to be effective in life and you have ADD, it's really all about coming up with effective systems so you don't have to remember everything. But anyhow, regardless, frankly, regardless of whether or not what my intentions are, or my diagnosis, or anything else, uh, it's relationship busting behavior to promise one thing and then not follow through on it. So it has caused issues in my relationships in the past. I actually had a doctor's appointment this morning, and I was telling the doctor, I said, as far as memory goes, it's um surprising the things that I remember, and it's terrifying about the things that I forget. And that's exactly what it is. I can remember the most unimportant, mundane, random bits of trivia, but I often forget my own birthday, like how old I'm going to be, or things that you'd think a person wouldn't forget. I forget. It's scary. So, yeah. So the point being, regardless of a person's intentions, regardless of what they have going on with them, it doesn't make for a good relationship. And it's okay to draw a line and say, like, this just doesn't work for me. I can't have this in my life. So I hope that helps, because I think it's important to see that um, it's not the diagnosis that's the problem, it's the behavior. And a lot of us, again, myself included, there's times where everybody has some degree of, um, maybe not everybody. I think a lot of people have some degree of uh, behavior that maybe isn't, um, the best for relationships. But this is where effective communication and emotional maturity and like a sincere desire to work on things really matters. That's why it really matters. So Grace says, same, Dana, about the memory thing. Boy, it's just, yeah, it's weird. Let's see, let me scroll up here. That's very true. Keep your distance says changed behavior is the best apology. I agree. And frankly, I would say it's the only sincere one. Changed behavior is the only sincere apology. Everything else is just talk. And some people, like, again, can struggle with uh, certain behaviors more so than others for a variety of reasons. But at the end of the day, if it's negatively impacting the relationship to the point of, I cannot I cannot have this level of chaos or whatever in my life, then something else needs to happen. Continuing to go down that, and I'm talking to myself as much as I am to anybody else, going down the same path expecting different results isn't an effective plan. It doesn't work. So if there is um, memory issues there, or um, just maybe that, and it could be people pleasing behavior, the promising one thing and then not delivering. It could be just flat out manipulation, like intentional manipulation of, oh yeah, I'll just say that and get them off my back. And when they have no intention of following through, it could have a wide variety of causes. But again, at the end of the day, the damage is still done. The result is the same. So, okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. Um, okay, Embers says, answer to why I put up with an abusive sociopathic narcissist. As a Navy brat, I learned that we bend ourselves into their molds since we are taught to be super loyal and flexible. Yes, I think a lot of the reason people tend to stay in abusive relationships is because of either really faulty programming. If you come from a deeply dysfunctional family with an abusive person in it and nobody kind of points out, hey, that's not normal, this shouldn't be happening, that's abusive, that's not okay, then um, we don't tend to, it's not on our radar of, oh, hey, that's a problem. If everybody else has been justifying their behavior, oh, this is dad, oh, dad had a bad day at work, oh, dad's a drinker, oh, dad's drunk, oh, mom is, uh, she's tired, she's stressed, it's that, there's always an excuse for abuse, then we keep going with that. And we tend to continue to excuse that kind of stuff as an adult instead of um, having, instead of learning healthy boundaries within our family of that is absolutely not okay. It doesn't matter if you had a bad day, if you are frustrated, if you're angry or whatever, it's not okay to hit another person or to just verbally unleash on them, to try to just destroy them. Like that is not okay. You can feel how you feel because everybody does, but it's the expectation that you handle that appropriately is reasonable, and that's instilled in most people by like first grade. So it's a problem if the child is really older than 6 and um, they don't understand that, or worse, they feel entitled. I'm frustrated, I'm mad, I'm upset, and then they feel entitled to be violent or aggressive. That's concerning. So yeah, so some of it is kind of this dysfunctional programming that we can pick up in a dysfunctional home, and some of it is incomplete programming. So maybe some of the messages, let's say you grew up in a wonderful, reasonably functional, wonderful kind of Norman Rockwell childhood home type environment, and everything was great, but then you had kind of the beliefs of treat others as you would have, or how does it go? Treat others as you would have them treat you, and forgive and forget, and you get what you give, and commitments forever, relationships are forever, families forever, relationships take work. A lot of these messages, if they're not couched in healthy context, if they're not couched in healthy context, like they work until they don't, right? So they'll work fine as long as you're around people that are emotionally mature and have effective communication and are kind of reasonable, balanced people who's solutions oriented and who have a desire to work as a team. That mindset works great, like I said, until it doesn't. And so you throw a really volatile personality into the mix, and then all of a sudden all of those messages about how to get along with other people and how to have relationships and all of these things, it just goes out the window. And that's a like that accounts for a lot of the reason people get into these relationships. So I'm by no means saying that the people that don't get into these relationships somehow see all this stuff clearly, and that we that have experienced this, all have all of this, kind of navel gazing to do, and to go back to our childhood and unturn every single stone. Sometimes it's really just not that deep. Like sometimes it's just the fact that these messages about relationships and love and friendships and commitment and forgiveness and all of this, they're not taught in a healthy context, and there's not a lot of healthy discussions surrounding them. And that's concerning, and that's a big part of the problem. So when I talk about, okay, yeah, let's asking ourselves, okay, well, where did I pick up this message about that I somehow needed to put up with mistreatment? This isn't to assign ourselves 100% responsibility for this or any of that. It's worth examining kind of this early, a lot of it's early programming that's been instilled in us about what relationships are, kind of what our place is in relationships, what dynamics are comfortable, what is reasonable and appropriate, and where our boundary standards and deal breakers are, or if we even have any. A lot of people especially in terms of deal breakers, their kind of main deal breakers tend to be, okay, well, if my partner hits me or if they cheat on me, then I'll leave. And those are the only two exceptions for them to break their vows or to break up in general. But the reality is, um, if we've waited until that degree where they're physically abusive, or we physically catch them cheating, we've probably waited way too long. There's a lot of problematic behavior that supersedes that. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I'll tell you, it was an absolute game changer for me. And this was one of the struggles, I think, again, for me, but also for a lot of people, is coming up with new boundary standards and deal breakers. So again, most people start off with those two: no hitting, no cheating. And then when they realize, oh, maybe I do need to kind of add some more in there and tighten things up and kind of, pull it back a little bit, um, then that can be anxiety inducing, because then they feel like, well, how do I know? Am I being too unreasonable? And are my expectations too high? And this, that, and the other. So there can be a struggle with that. And so what I was just mentioning, the game changer for me was that realization of, any situation that causes perpetual confusion, crazy making, or kind of just chronic frustration or chronic negativity is not worth me being in, because it negatively impacts my emotional health. And once I began making my emotional health a priority, a lot of things began changing. Whereas before, I was very quick to throw my emotional health under the bus. It wasn't a necessity. It was sort of like, oh, that would be nice. Self-care, it's like, that would be nice. Or I thought of self-care in terms of a bubble bath or a glass of wine or relaxation. I didn't think of self-care in terms of boundaries, standards, and deal breakers. And so when I began thinking of it that way and realizing, hey, it's a big world, and hopefully we're alive for a long time. And even still, life is way too short to just deal with really high conflict, kind of the crazy makers of the world. Like, I just don't want to do that. And it's not worth it. So, my life is radically improved. So yeah, just some thoughts. Okay, let me scroll down here. Jack is passing on a question from Miss America Spicy, who asks, do they ever just go away? This hoovering is a mess. I just ignore all his calls and texts. Help. Am I doing the right thing? They do tend to go away in time. It's sort of like, let's say it's like a dog, okay, who wants to come into your room, and the dog is scratching and you have the door shut, and the dog is scratching at the door and scratching at the door and scratching at the door, and then howling and then barking and then yapping and then doing all these things. And you're so close to just pulling your hair out. Eventually, once the dog realizes, okay, she's not going to open the door, it does tend to just move on. So maybe that's a bad analogy. I feel bad for the poor dog in that analogy. But with problematic people, when they tend to be obsessive like that, and I would call it obsessive. It's more than just persistent. It shows a complete lack of respect of your boundaries. And it's that whole mindset of, if I just keep at it long enough and hard enough, and if I'm obnoxious enough, she'll eventually crack. Little kids have this down. That's probably a better example. Little kids have this down, and because most people after time do end up cracking, because it just can wear you out. So we don't have control over his behavior. So thinking about, okay, well, what do you have control over? Can you block him? Can you, and if you're like one of the many people here that struggle with kind of that obsessive, stalkish type behavior, um, blocking them across social media on your phone and everything doesn't do much. They'll just change. They'll start contacting you from a different number. Sometimes it helps just to, at a minimum, to give you peace of mind, to create new social media accounts and to get a different phone number. And then it just stops because they don't have that information. So, in terms of creating alternate social media accounts or alternate email accounts, I would encourage you to leave the old ones up so they don't get wise to the fact that you've switched accounts. And you can block them, but they're going to probably just try to message you on those old accounts. If you do create new accounts, create them with totally different names, not your real first name, not your real middle name, which is what a lot of people do. So something totally different, use different pictures. And if there's any doubt, I would encourage you to do a Google search of different images that you have on your social media profile, or do a Google search on your name, on your email. It'll show what other people are seeing if they Google you, if they're trying to find, more information on you. So it's always good to kind of know what other people can see when they do Google you. But yeah, that kind of obsessiveness does tend to die down with time. I would encourage you to switch how you're, maybe not switch, but I guess for lack of a better word right now, to change how you're viewing this behavior, if you haven't already. So instead, like I mentioned, it's instead of seeing it as persistent, which for some people that can be a slippery slope to, oh, they must care because they're trying, they continue to try. And there's a difference between controlling behavior and caring behavior. And that level of obsessiveness is all about control. There's no caring in it because there's no respect for your boundaries. So making sure that you're seeing it clearly for what it is, for the problematic behavior that it is. And also taking, and I guess reminding yourself every time you get a message from him until you can start changing, changing screen names, changing accounts, these kinds of things, seeing it as, yep, this is confirmation that this relationship isn't going to work. This is absolutely disrespectful, boundary busting behavior, and I want no part of this. And any person that is going to be in my life would never act like this. This is outrageous and wildly inappropriate. And so with that said, if you are still living in the same place, or working at the same job outside of your home, it can be a good, and I just would advise this anyhow, but it can definitely be a good idea to start taking alternate ways to work, to get a timer for lights in your house, to consider getting cameras for, it's a good, like I said, this stuff is a good idea anyhow in this day and age. Getting a camera, front and rear camera for your vehicle, that's motion sensor, 4K, night vision kind of a thing. Getting some cameras for outside of your home. They have the Nest doorbell thing. There's other cameras that you can get on Amazon. A couple $100 will get you a pretty good setup, just in case they do decide to show up on your doorstep. So, yeah. Let's see. Yes, good point. UNA says, and definitely unfollow them. That will just drive you crazy if you follow them. Yes, absolutely. If they know that you do follow them, they're more than likely going to try to provoke you. They're going to put content on their social media talking about their new relationship and how thankful they are that they're finally away, that they finally know what they want, that they finally found this amazing person, that they're away from the drama and headache that was you. If they're really malicious and intentional, they're going to say all kinds of things to provoke a reaction, especially if they're still trying to get a hold of you. Or they might go the opposite end. I'm so sad. I don't know if I want to be on this planet anymore. I've lost the only love I've ever known. These kinds of things. So yeah, following them is there is no benefit to that. Jack has mentioned to Grace, he says, it's been suggested to use pseudonyms from narcissistic recovery abuse communities, Facebook secret groups, and such. And I agree completely. Here's the thing too, with social media, they change their privacy, like what can be seen and can't seen. They change their privacy settings, they change their policies, they change all kinds of things. And they don't tell people. They don't tell people, regular Facebook users, and they don't tell like administrators of groups. Pretty much, it's beyond frustrating. It feels like ongoing gaslighting is what it feels like. Because I'll go into the group and then all of a sudden there's new features that are there, and then there's features that aren't there. And it's, it kind of makes you question your sanity when that happens. So the moderators and admins and such do the best that they can to see to keep up with those kinds of things, but we can't guarantee any type of privacy or safety. So in Facebook too, with groups, unless you're, and I'm not even sure if this is still a thing. Even if you're in a closed group, they still will recommend that group to other people that you're friends with on Facebook, so they can see that you're a member of it. Stuff like this can really inadvertently out somebody who maybe doesn't want to be outed. So keeping a fake profile for those reasons can give you the peace of mind, Okay, good deal. Miss America says, yes, thank you. Yes, he calls from different numbers. I have no social media accounts. When he's in town, he rides past my house. I have cameras all around. Thank you. Blessings to all. Okay, how do you feel about changing your phone number? Yeah, that kind of stuff is concerning. Yam says, wait, let me scroll up and see if okay, mine has locked me out of all my accounts, asks for my screen time every hour, and has to be on call or video call to see that I'm not doing anything I'm not supposed to, sometimes even screen sharing. Blames it on anxiety because I supposedly, quote unquote, cheated, where it was only a chat with a new friend from class that he didn't approve of, and he blames me for wrecking his mental health. Okay, and so that's concerning. That's really, regardless if it's anxiety induced or not, it's really controlling behavior. And if he already has it in his mind that you're the abusive person, you're the deceitful one, in his mind, then he's the victim. And these kinds of situations can really be kind of a slippery slope to violent outbursts and all kinds of things, because if he's got it in his mind that you're deceitful, you're gaslighting him, you're emotionally abusive, you're cheating, all of this, he's going to feel entitled and justified in whatever actions he's taking. And if he already feels entitled and justified to be making these outrageous demands about screen time and all of this, that's a problem, and it's only going to continue to grow. So I would strongly encourage you to take some time and to think about what kind of kind of where your boundary standards and deal breakers are, because none of that's normal in a relationship. Um, and it's not normal to be in it. Well, let's forget the word normal. It's not healthy to be controlled like that. It's not healthy to have to um, kind of be compliant out of fear of what this person is going to do or how they're going to perceive things. None of that's normal. He might have concerns. It's one thing for a person to be like, oh, all of a sudden you're chatting with this new person from class, and that makes me kind of uncomfortable. And I think that there might be more going on here. A person can think whatever they want to think, but it doesn't uh, it doesn't justify that level of um, smothering, controlling, punishing type behavior. And I would encourage you to think about what would he say or do if you were to say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to continue being punished for having a chat with a fellow classmate. I get that you weren't okay with that, but let's talk about this. I'm not your child. And even so, I would hope that you wouldn't treat your child like that. But I am an adult and I'm not okay with being treated like this. And I'm not doing it anymore. So I would be curious. I'm not advising that you do that. That can potentially put somebody in harm's way. But what would he say, do you think, if you were to go that route? Let's see, Embers, let me scroll up here. Okay, Ember says, just had a scare. A colleague said someone's stalking him at my new job. I went into meltdown since I've been stalked by 5 men in my past. The work stalking was a prank, but I'm still scared to get into cars with men or date even after 5 years. Any advice besides EMDR that I'll do this week on it? Okay, I guess I'm not clear. So, okay, this colleague said that somebody was stalking him at this new job that you're at, and your colleague that was a joke from your colleague? Your colleague wasn't really being stalked? And you're still scared to get into cars with men. Are you concerned about getting into cars with men because of your history, that the past with stalking, or is it having to do with, with being attacked or these kinds of things? I guess the way that I'm interpreting what you're saying is it seems like there's several roads that are kind of converging into one that's manifesting as anxiety and fear around getting into cars with men or dating that goes um, beyond your past of just quote unquote just stalking. It seems like there's been other events that are contributing to kind of being alone with um, men, or men that you don't really know that are emotionally safe. So um, any advice? Do I have any advice on that? Well, gosh, I am not a fan of people getting into cars in general with people they're not that are not emotionally safe, that have not proven themselves to be emotionally safe. I don't get into cars one-on-one. I never did, except once, which ended up being a huge problem. I don't get into cars one-on-one with um, men that I work with. I will as a group, like if we're all going to lunch or something, and there's 3 or 4 of us and we pile in, to a car, I'll do that. But I'm not comfortable I don't like, I, Ubers where it's just me and a male driver. It makes me uncomfortable, so I don't do it. And it's just an emotional safety thing. And I guess for me, I'm fine with that. Right? That's not something that I think is necessarily inappropriate or unreasonable, you know, um, kind of, especially given your past and my past and kind of what we know exists in the world. So, and that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because of course, there are a lot of really great guys out there, but there's a lot of them that aren't, and that really ruin it for the rest. And I think in this day and age too, men um, understand. The whole like dating protocol has really changed. Men don't expect to pick up a woman at her place, at least for the handful of first times they're together, kind of for those reasons, because most women are like, no, you're not going to know where I live. Like, I'm not comfortable with that. I'll meet you at the restaurant, or I'll meet you at the coffee shop. And then until we can get comfortable enough to be like, okay, you seem cool and we've talked enough, and I feel comfortable enough that, yeah, I'm okay with you maybe driving me home or picking me up, or coming to my place for dinner or whatnot. But it's an emotional trust thing there. So, I think, again, in this day and age, to be alone with somebody is that you don't know. That's having a certain degree of having a reasonable degree of fear and skepticism, I think, is appropriate. So I don't know if that's necessarily anything I would even want to work on. Maybe moderate a little bit. So if another person, it's concerning, I guess out of everything that you said, what's concerning to me is that a coworker said that he was being stalked, or he was being stalked at your new job. And that was such an active trigger for you back to your experiences. So there was a lot of like transference there between what was going on with him, even though it might have been a joke or whatnot, in your past. So it's definitely worth like moving forward and processing that. But again, pretty much everybody that I know, even some guys I know, are not comfortable getting into cars with other people they don't know, or even meeting women at their house, or meeting other guys if they're gay at their house. Like, people tend to meet in public. They come on their own. They leave on their own until that degree of emotional safety has been built up enough to where that trust is there. Right? Yeah. UNA says yes. I would never want to give advice to be comfortable getting into cars alone with anyone you don't know. Yeah. And Jack is saying YouTube is chock full of videos basically talking about how awful dating is these days, and not just because of stalking, but because of online dating, society's men versus women attitudes, and so on. Yeah. There's also a lot has unfortunately progressed in terms of the really predatory people of the world. And you think about, it's terrifying to think they're just now truly catching on to the power of the internet and how they can use that. And there's all different, and they're always going to stay a step ahead, because normal decent people, even the ones that are trying to catch these people, your mind just doesn't jump to some of the stuff that they do. So they're always going to be outmaneuvering people, because they're trying to think up this stuff nonstop, day in and day out, of how can I get what I want, basically. And so these things are very legitimate. And it's not just with dating. I mean, it's with, I'm sorry, I don't mean to add to like your anxiety, like your anxiety fueled fire, but some of this stuff is very real, and uh, it's very concerning because it's not talked about to the degree that I think it really needs to be. There's job interviews where it's fake job interviews, and they'll post them on even paid job sites to add to the legitimacy of things, and then people end up going to a hotel room or kind of this scuzzy office park in the middle of nowhere, and um, you know things happen to them. So it's just that situational awareness and erring on the side of caution is, I think it's always important, and it's going to continue being important, as uh, it always was and it always will be, I guess. Right? UNA mentions, um, who would joke about being stalked? Tell the truth, I'd worry that that was a ruse to make me let down my guard with that person. Possible red flag. I agree. In terms of, I just don't find that level of joking to be funny. I don't know the full context, but if they were quote unquote joking to induce fear in somebody else's, which is kind of what it sounds like, that to me is not funny, and it is concerning, and it is a red flag. Like, that's just, I would get some distance. So, let's see. Critical Mass was saying, yeah, I've seen videos of people going around telling others that they're special forces or something, but they're not. That's another big challenge with the internet, is anybody can be anything on the internet. And that level of deceit is becoming more known and more commonplace. Back, gosh, back in the day, like 10, 15 years ago, and I'm sure some level of deceit was always there, but for the most part, people, what you saw was what you got. You didn't have that level of like predatory behavior that you do now. And with people, just how casually people lie about major things, saying that they have degrees that they don't, saying that they have titles, that they're special forces, or that they're a police officer, or that they're this or that. And it's concerning. Or staging different events for social media. um, it's it's really concerning. So, and I guess to me that's kind of a red flag anyhow. If somebody is, um, if they're trying to establish credibility in kind of like shortcut type ways by saying, oh, that they're a member of the military, that they're a member of the clergy, that they're it's sort of like the, oh, well, you can trust me, I'm special forces. You can trust me, I'm a teacher. You can trust me, I'm a nurse. You can trust me, I'm a parent. You can trust me, I'm, fill in the blank. That tends, most people that are trustworthy, um, they don't say things like that. So that's kind of a big tip off with online dating stuff. If somebody's going to great lengths to really sell themselves, uh, it's kind of a definite proceed with caution type thing. Those are very common scams of, oh yes, I'm in the military, or I'm a, uh, or that they have some sort of, um, they're kind of alluding to having, a well-paying job, or that they're a successful entrepreneur or an engineer or these kinds of things, which all of that's to establish trust. So later on, when they do start asking you for money, you're already thinking, oh, well, they're good for it, right? This person's a wealthy entrepreneur, or, oh, well, they're in the military. Surely they wouldn't lie, or they wouldn't need to lie, or, uh, you know, so they're priming the pump, so to speak, before they ask you for money. Um, let's see here. I am curious if you guys are comfortable, Jack and Huffle Mom, if you guys are talking about it. Um, I'm curious, what is the latest with the house extension? Have you guys come to an agreement or a plan with how to move forward, or are you going to move forward? Let's see. Oh, okay. Huffle Mom is Miss America Spicy. Okay, let's cover this real quick. She says, I'm more afraid of him, of finding him on my property when leaving or coming home from work. He has said he can watch me anytime. Thank God I have wonderful neighbors. I'm widowed. Okay. Is um if you think that he might be a legitimate threat, because that's terrifying. I don't blame you. It might be worth, and I would encourage you to do this, to call non-emergency police in your area and let them know what's going on. Let them know what kind of car he drives and a description of what he looks like, and say, that you're concerned about, putting a restraining order on him or anything like that, because it's just going to be, if this is how you're feeling, that you're concerned it's going to make things worse. He's very obsessive and controlling, and this is the kind of stuff that he does. And what advice do they have for you? And at a minimum, I would encourage you to get some protection and keep it on you. Keep some in your car. Keep. We've talked about this before. So um, it's the best. Well, ideally, the best type of self-protection a person can have is uh, avoidance of the situation altogether. So the kind of the last resort is self-protection, and it's also going to be the self-protection that you feel comfortable using. I see a lot of people, they get weapons and they're not comfortable using them, or they're scared of them. And if that's and that's okay. I'm not comfortable with weapons either. If For those of you that are thinking, even though I grew up around them, I'm not comfortable with them. So it's it's kind of knowing where your comfort level is and then what you are comfortable with. So if um, so for example, I have a can of bear mace, and I keep meaning to bring it down here to show you guys. It's like the size of a hairspray bottle. It's big and it's easy to use. You basically point and spray, and the distance on that thing is significant, and it will drop a charging bear. I feel comfortable using that on a person who is aggressive and um, has intention to do harm to me, who's on my property. I don't think I would feel comfortable using a gun. Not because I have some sort of, not because I'm like overly enchanted with human life. I'm not. So take that for what it is. But it's more of, I would absolutely second guess myself. I'd be nervous about the gun. I just wouldn't be comfortable with it. So because of that, and it's difficult to hit a moving target too. So there's just lots of reasons why that's not going to be my self-protection of choice. There's also wasp spray that sprays pretty far out. Bear mace is illegal in some states, so um, you know, but wasp spray can also be good. Has a good range on it. It's affordable. You can get, a can for like $5. You can buy a couple and leave them around. You have one in your kitchen, one in your bedroom. I wouldn't leave one in your car. You don't want it to get too hot and explode. But one in your bedroom, one in your garage, one, you know, kind of scattered throughout the house can help. So making sure your cell phone is charged, uh, getting motion sensor lights. though that can be really good. Though again, that's a fairly affordable thing. That depending on how much property you have, you can even get some that are solar powered, where you can just kind of um, put them up on uh, you know around the house, on a fence, on a tree, on the garage, you name it. Uh, let's see. Truth Seeker says, I have nothing but respect for the military, but wonder how many of them tormented their siblings before they became these heroic soldiers. This doesn't change their military valor. Yes. Yeah, I don't know. My ex-husband was military, and so, you marry into it, you kind of become part of it. So there is a lot of really, it's a mixed bag. It's people. There's a lot of people in there that were absolutely just good, solid people. And then there were some that were complete sociopaths, and some that I'm sure were horrific to their siblings, and others that were absolutely pacifist, peace-seeking people. Where I'm like, how on earth did you join the military? It's very strange, very strange. But there's just a wide mix of people out there that join all kinds of groups, I guess. I have to say, I was surprised when uh, I I found, and it sounds so funny to say it now. I was surprised when I found out that there was the level of cheating in the military that there is. I guess I wasn't that young. I mean, I was in my late 20s when I got married, and thought that I had this idea of, well, if you're in the military, you have these really solid values. Same thing with police or clergy. If you're in these fields, that you have a certain type of value system. And that was just very naive of me. And, I was completely shocked when I found out the level of uh, deception that was going on a regular basis. It was really, really rattled me. Oh, okay. Okay. Jack and Huffle Mom says, okay, the plan is to fall back to an earlier idea of just building a shed or garage type structure. So we have some better storage options for a few things. We pulled out because the contractor said it was a money pit, costing more than the property is worth. Okay. Well, how do you two feel about that? Um, let's see. Let me scroll up here. That's an interesting point. Soft Breezy Day says, I think a whole generation grew up watching quote unquote reality TV, which celebrated backstabbing, deceitful, greedy, generally anything to get ahead or win. And now they think that's how you're supposed to act. It is concerning with this stuff. And, not only reality TV, but very attention seeking, dramatic YouTube channels. There's a lot of them out there, and it's very concerning. And unfortunately, and not only is it concerning, but um, y- these impressionable people can see, oh, they're getting famous. These absolutely just, these people are being rewarded for really horrific behavior. And that's concerning. And like what I was mentioning earlier, with people kind of staging these different events in public just to get likes and comments and follow, just for social media clout. It's scary. It's like a Black Mirror episode. So yeah, it does kind of make you wonder uh, how that shapes a person's view of what appropriate or reasonable behavior is. Bonnie was saying, definitely don't date online. I think it's like with anything else, you just have to go slow and realize that, especially on the internet, anybody can pretend to be who um, they can pretend to be anybody that they want to be. But if they're also not, if their feet aren't planted firmly in reality, and I would say that's another good chunk of people out there, then they might not even be intentionally trying to mislead you. They could have old pictures posted because, from 10, 15 years ago, thinking, kind of deluding themselves, oh, oh, I look the same as I did back then. Or they could be leaving out key details for whatever reason. Or so and it can be very easy to, especially if a person's lonely, it can be very easy to kind of fall in love with the fantasy idea of who we think a person is. So I just really encourage people, before you even start having feelings for somebody, meet them in person. Email with them, chat on the phone, text back and forth, do like a few Zooms with them, and then meet for like a coffee date. Just something simple, in and out, no pressure, uh, to see if there's any type of, you know, chemistry or red flags or anything that surface, and then just go slow and realize every relationship has that idealized stage in the beginning. And it's it's not so much about avoiding that, because I don't even know if that's truly avoidable. It's just recognizing that it's a thing and it's there and it's always present. And there's always a difference, always, always, always a difference between how we think something is going to be and how it actually is, across the board, with jobs, with meeting a new friend, with building a friendship, with the relationships we have with our parents, or with having a child, or owning a pet, or do you know what I mean? Dating or anything. We always have this idea of how something is going to go down. And then there's just the reality of it, which is very different, which you don't know and until you start going down that road of it actually becoming real. So going slow, kind of keeping your feelings in check and realizing, okay, this is the idealized stage. This doesn't mean that I've found my soulmate. And if it's real, then time will tell, you know? So some people luck out and there is this instant connection and it's wonderful. And both people are who uh, you know, they have that effective communication, they have that emotional maturity, they have that team orientedness, they have that solution orientedness, they get along famously and it works. But I think that's far more the exception than it is the norm. All right, let me scroll down here. Um, Daniel says, when you live in a small town, online is really the only way to find new faces. Yes, there's a lot of benefit to meeting people online. It's a great way to kind of um, cut through the mixed bag of people and to speed up the process of kind of finding your tribe, right? Finding people that you click with. I used to be, and I still am. It'll be different when the pandemic stuff kind of simmers down some more, but and hopefully we find a vaccine soon. But there was a great meetup, a great website called meetup.com. And that website was wonderful because it was the social aspect of and the benefit of meeting people online that have similar interests without the pressure of dating, and also the benefit of meeting large groups of people. So it was wonderful in so many ways. You got to meet new people, got to do new things. It can be a great way for dating because you also can find, everybody there is interested in that thing that they're meeting up around, whether it's board games or hiking or camping or, whatever it might be. And they're also there to meet new people. So people are warm and friendly. You don't feel like the third wheel trying to kind of make new friends, which can have its own challenges as an adult. So, okay, let me scroll down here. Let's see, people are talking about abuse and brain damage. Okay. I cannot read that first name, but Gonzalez says, horror fact, studies show that long-term narcissistic abuse is likely to cause brain damage, but can be healed through meditation and focusing on the positive. And Hufflemom was saying, well, technically all abuse can cause brain damage, particularly if it begins when one is quite young. Yes. Yes. And here's the thing is, our brains, there's a concept called neuroplasticity, and it's basically the moldability or changeability of our neurological process. So meaning that our brain has the potential to change. And it does change. It changes, there's chemical changes occurring all of the time. There's different pathways being formed and being rerouted all the time. And this happens to a significant degree when I want to say before like the age of 1 year. There's a lot of what's called neural pruning going on. And I forget how many like neurons and there's like exponentially more. An infant has exponentially more than a child or an adult has. And so it's just basically it's all of these like neural possibilities. And so this is why it's so good to expose a child to all kinds of things, foreign languages and music, and in engaging their different senses, and just exposing them to as many different forms of stimuli as possible to kind of keep these different areas of the brain. And then what isn't being activated on a regular basis just tends to get pruned away. So yeah, it's very interesting but there's brain changes that also happen. There's brain changes that happen when we eat sugar. There's brain changes that happen when we're happy and when we're sad and when we're scared. And there's brain changes. Now, granted, these are only temporary changes. These aren't permanent ones, but some of the more permanent ones can be when you think about habits, patterns of behavior. Your brain kind of learns this pathway of getting needs met in a certain way, and that's why it can be so difficult to break a habit, because it's like this neural rut that's created in our brain. With abuse, it's like, well, and with abuse, it's there's more factors going on at play. So it's not just, I say just, it's not quote unquote just fear or anxiety, which can have long-term impacts on a person, because that kicks off your fight or flight mechanism. And that's only meant to be very short term. So when we experience danger, we if things are if our system's running properly, we experience that fight or flight in short bursts in order to get out of danger. But if our household is dangerous, then we're continually in fight or flight, and that's going to have um, long lasting effects on a person and set them up for anxiety and depression and all kinds of things. So, but yeah, with abuse and even with significant trauma that's just gone unprocessed, there's changes that happen within the brain. It's sad, it's tragic, and it's terrifying, kind of all at the same time. How impacted a person can really be in all of the different ways that they can be impacted. So there's been studies done with people that have gone through either long-term trauma or short-term trauma, depending on how significant the trauma was for them. And it changes their perceptions of seemingly like benign situations. So like they've done tests, for example, that they'll show a picture of a person that has just a neutral expression on their face, and then they'll ask these participants, okay, well, what do you see here? How is this person feeling? Or what is this person's intention? And those that tend to have experienced abuse tend to perceive the actions of other people as being significantly more hostile and more aggressive than they are. So that's concerning, kind of like the gal was saying earlier with her current boyfriend, feeling she was chatting with a classmate and he was feeling cheated on and lied to, and then started becoming very, very controlling. I want to see your screen time every hour. I want you to, if I, you got to re-earn trust with me, and like taking it to this point of extreme kind of stuff. If I was a gambling man, I'd put money on it that there's been some significant trauma there. That's very much like that anxious style of attachment in motion, to a pathological degree of I'm terrified I'm going to lose you. And so now I'm doing all of these things to keep you. Yikes. And the thing is, if he was like that, it didn't start with her, and it's not going to end with her. That kind of stuff is going to continue until and even if he seeks therapy, there's no guarantee that that's going to change all that much. But this is why boundary standards and deal breakers are important, and realizing that we don't need, just because somebody might have had some horrific trauma in their past doesn't mean that we need to ride alongside of them throughout their whole healing process and be subjugated to, controlling, scary, aggressive, smothering type behavior like that. And that can sound really, insensitive or uncompassionate, but it's not. So sinking ourselves to try to save somebody else is not compassionate. It's poor boundaries. And it's really important that we see it that way, even if other people don't. And a lot of other people won't see it that way. Oh, you should be more patient, more compassionate, more understanding. This person had a terrible childhood, or their ex was awful to them. And so therefore, try to earn their trust back, walk on more eggshells, do more to kind of placate this stuff. And you don't have to do that. You really don't. It's okay to have boundaries and standards and deal breakers. Fatima is here and says, hi, am I late? That's depends on how you look at it. The live stream started about an hour and a half ago. But as Huffle says, you're not. You're right on time. So yes, I like that. You are right on time. Let's see. Let me scroll up. Um, da, 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 da. Scrolling. Okay, that's interesting. Critical Mass says, um, I recommend looking up Dr. Mark Gordon. He's got a lot of good info about concussions and brain inflammation. He's been a guest 2, maybe 3 times on the Joe Rogan podcast. That's interesting. There's, the whole concept of inflammation is something that um, I'll be curious. I guess I'll just be curious to see how all of that unfolds in the next 10 years. Inflammation is one of those things I don't think enough um, like credit or weight is assigned to it. It's really significant. I know that gosh, back in the 70s, Linus Pauling, who, and I still think he holds the record, the only 2-time uh, individual who has won the Nobel Prize unshared. So it's not a team that won it; it was him. Brilliant guy, and he was a big fan of vitamin C. And there was a lot. It was really unfortunate. It was basically kind of laughed out of the medical community, but he really had a strong belief, and not even belief, theory going about the the kind of the human condition and how significant inflammation was and how deadly it was and how it could be how important it was that it was controlled and that our diet really negatively impacted our health. Kind of the I would say he was one of the front runners in terms of examining the connection between nutrition and um, like total health, holistic health, like physical health, mental health, emotional health, these kinds of things. And his whole, well, a big part of his theory was that vitamin C was, in terms of physical health, that it helped reduce inflammation significantly, and that the animals that produced like high levels of vitamin C didn't have anywhere near the inflammation levels that humans have, or other mammals in general that didn't produce vitamin C, and that the ones that produced higher levels didn't have the health conditions. So, and if I remember correctly, his whole thing too was with I think both arteries and veins, that when this inflammation happened, this kind of shearing effect, kind of this like cracking, splitting of the inner walls of veins and arteries, it would kind of start shearing. Like if I don't know if you've ever seen like a Pantene commercial and they show what a hair follicle looks like when there's all these split ends, it would look like that when there's inflammation and not enough vitamin C. And so it was the shearing of these inner walls that was causing um, this. It was catching the plaque that was being released, and these plaques aren't a bad thing. They're designed to kind of patch up the cracks in our inner walls. But it's a problem when there's so many cracks, and then you kind of just get all this gunk inside our system. So anyways, I'm way off track. But interesting stuff when it has to do with body and inflammation and it wouldn't surprise me one bit if in the next, handful of years, we find that there's significant connection between inflammation and all kinds of different issues, physical and emotional and otherwise. Um, Jack says, Dana is cool with us plugging her friend Angie. So when we're done, consider finding the channel Angie Atkinson and searching for videos on narcissistic fleas. Yeah, and really, I'm cool with you guys plugging anyone, as long as maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm saying, uh, there's a few people out there, as long as it's helpful information and not information coming from um, anybody that's claiming to, regardless of whether or not they are, anybody that's claiming to be a terrible person or a narcissist or all of that. I do not want to promote that garbage, frankly, on my channel. It's a cash grab and it's nothing more, and it's dangerous and they do a lot of damage. So I really want to promote things that um, I feel are valid, helpful resources for others, especially because a lot of people in our community, they're new and they're very vulnerable. And it's easy to get taken in by thinking um, that the wrong people have insights that they don't. Critical Mass says, Dana, knowledge win. Very good to hear you know about this. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. My brain, I I know all kinds of things, all kinds of random things that are, for the most part, really irrelevant. But anything that's significant, ask me what I had for breakfast today, no idea. And honestly, I don't even know how old I am. I know I was saying that earlier. I mean that. I'd have to go Google it to just double check. I just don't care. I don't keep track of stuff. The stuff that falls out of my brain is terrifying. The stuff I remember is surprising. Okay, let me scroll up here. Um, let's see. Let me also just expand on that as far as sharing resources and such. I guess I just want people to know I'm never going to get, there's very few things that I'm going to be upset about um, in the chat. So if somebody asks, if somebody shares uh, a channel or mentions something that they find helpful, even if I completely disagree and find it concerning, I'm not gonna like remove anybody for that or do anything drastic. If anything, I'll just say, I'm not comfortable promoting that stuff here, or you know, whatnot. So just FYI. Okay, let's see. Oh, Huffle Mom is mentioning the troll that I got. Who says you caught that one before any of the rest of us could? You rock. That was an absolute coincidence, and it was probably the only time that that'll ever happen. Yeah, sheer coincidence. Too bad, too sad for that guy. Uh, oh, well, thanks, Huffle Mom. Says Dana, as a moderator, am I allowed to say how awesome I think you are? Or is that disallowed? Oh, I don't even know what to say to that. I think you guys are pretty awesome too, which is the truth. not just Helpful Mom and Jack, but all of you guys here, especially all of the people that are here on a weekly basis, supporting each other and coming up with all kinds of just thought-provoking questions and all of it. Pretty cool. Keep your distance. Okay, this is a great question. It says, can abuse affect your memory? Yes, and in several different ways. So stress in general can affect a person's memory. So abuse is stressful, and abuse is also more than stressful. So um, there can be, so stress can change how a person's memory. It can really negatively impact things. Difficulty with concentration, difficulty with both long-term and short-term memory. If it's a traumatic event, like abuse often is, then a person can uh, be repressing certain events, but they can be, um, what is the word I'm looking for? Um, kind of like just they're not able to recall them. Trauma is a very interesting process, what happens neurologically. So depending on how recent it is, depending on how significant it was to the person or how terrifying it was, it, for a lot of people, trauma can feel like a firecracker going off in your head. And there can be a lot of feelings of confusion and fear and shame and embarrassment with not being able to remember certain things that they feel they should be able to remember. So um, it's one of the reasons oftentimes survivors of trauma are interviewed multiple times, because your brain kind of tends to come back online over a period of time. So what is said at that first interview there might be significantly more details at the fifth interview of something that happened. So it's also with trauma, um, there's some kind of backdoor ways into remembering certain things. Again, I don't recommend that anybody kind of go at this alone. I would encourage you to, at a minimum, go, if you want to explore this route, do so with a person that you feel emotionally safe with. But exploring the event through your different senses. So the sense of smell tends to be one that's very deeply ingrained. So we might not consciously remember. If a person is, let's say they're robbed, they might not remember what the person looks like or anything. But if instead of thinking like linearly, if they're thinking about, okay, well, do you remember any smells? Oh, yes, this person smelled like cigarette smoke or like alcohol or like musty laundry or whatever it is. That can help unlock other memories that they have about the event. The brain is a fascinating, frightening organ. And yeah, it's interesting all the ways that it tries to protect us. Yeah, memory loss, true seeker saying, yeah, the freeze response, disassociation, memory loss. There's repression. There's all kinds of different defense mechanisms that occur. And defense mechanisms aren't inherently a bad thing. They're there to defend ourselves. They're there to help us protect ourselves. So denial, even though it sounds negative, right? Oh, denial or repression or disassociation or all of it serves a purpose. And thank goodness, what a wonderful thing our brain is, that it's able to do these things for us. So our brain knows how much it can handle It's sort of like it's a giant computer that's able to kind of run the controls, which is pretty cool, you know? So these different defenses, um, we all have them, we all use them. And they're categorized into primitive defenses, um, less primitive or like more mature defenses, and then mature defenses. And the different categories have to do with um, I guess, well, and I guess before primitive defenses, you also have like pathological defenses. So not everybody experiences pathological defenses. Pathological defenses are primitive defenses taken to an extreme level that's um, generally it's outside of reality. So that person's constructing, it's basically functional, not even necessarily functional, it's psychosis, functional or non-functional. So with certain personality disorders, um, where a person's just like they're creating their reality on the fly, that I would say would be like a functional form of psychosis because they're not in reality, they're in their created reality, and that's terrifying. So, and that can be very, very dangerous because you're not dealing with, you can't effectively, um, respond to reality if you're not living in it. So being in reality is important. It can be very uncomfortable at times. This is why we have all these different defense mechanisms, but it's the more, okay, so back to it, the more mature the defenses are that we're able to use, the more kind of in sync we are with reality. So the more primitive defenses, the more we're pushing against reality. We're trying to escape reality. And the more mature, the more we're able to function within reality. So, and like I said, we all use um, a wide range of defenses. The more mature defenses, these are often used, of course, it's like anything else. Once you have awareness that, hey, this is a thing, and there's kind of learning different ways of coping. When we know different, we tend to do different. And when we know better, a better way of handling things, we all take the path of least resistance. Handling things that are in an effective, solutions-oriented way is the most effective. And so if we're comfortable with that, then that's the path that we go. So all of this other like dysfunction and, passive and passive aggressive and aggressive behavior and all of these mental gymnastics and hoops that we jump through in order to avoid stress and avoid conflict and avoid confrontation it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. But when we're engaging in that, of course, it's always easier to see this kind of stuff in other people, right? When we see other people doing this, like a narcissist or other person with some really pathological behavior, they're doing that because that's their way of going about getting their needs met. If a person has like healthy, well-adjusted means of getting their needs met, and they're able to effectively, use assertive communication and work as a team and do all of that, they would do that because that's the path of least resistance. It's so much easier to tell somebody, hey, I was a little bit hurt that whatever it might be, that you made this comment the other day about whatever, my weight, my hair, my parenting, my whatever it might be. It's so much easier to just address the issue, bring it up, discuss it, and then resolve it and then drive on than it is to harbor, hurt feelings and then resort to passive aggressive or aggressive behavior and then trying to deny it or minimize, justify, oh, they didn't really mean that, or oh, they didn't know better, or oh, this or oh, that. Like all of that's just avoiding It's done to avoid discomfort. So, yeah, interesting stuff. Very true. Huffle Mom says, yeah, ADHD makes that 10 times worse because stress can pile up like most stimuli and prevent things from being remembered too. Yes. Jack was saying, he says, I forget where I heard about this, but there's a brain gut connection. The gut produces some serotonin. And that's a specific example. Yes, this was if I remember correctly, a fairly recent finding. They're finding that some chemicals, like serotonin, they previously only thought those were neurochemicals, like neurotransmitters, things that existed within the brain. And now they're finding that they is quite a bit of um, chemicals being released in our gut, which is fascinating. It's not, I don't think it's necessarily in our gut. I think it might be um, somewhere on the digestive tract. But yeah, absolutely fascinating. Um, let's see, Fatima asks, can you recover from PTSD? And can anything cause PTSD? Okay, so these are two really great questions. These are very big questions. So let's start with the second one. Can anything cause PTSD? Yes. The short answer to that is yes. Um, however, it's there's PTSD is a pervasive, lasting, so long lasting trauma response. So whenever somebody experiences something traumatic, it's normal and healthy that they have a trauma response to it. When it becomes a problem is when that trauma response continues on and doesn't resolve itself. Normally, let's say something scary happens. Let's say, um, um, let's say you get robbed. We'll just use that example. And that's a very traumatic event for you, and you're having nightmares. You're scared to go jogging again. You're scared. Um, you're having all of these ruminating thoughts. You're finding um, you're kind of checking and double checking and triple checking your door. These kinds of things. So you're noticing some behavior changes. To some degree, that's normal after an event like that. If it goes on for, I'd have to look at the exact like DSM timeframe, but I would say generally longer than 2 months, then it's concerning. It That's kind of those kinds of that hypervigilance and the nightmares and these kinds of things, that all tends to go hand in hand with a trauma, but it tends to kind of get better with time. It's just that initial response of, oh my gosh, something really scary happened to me and I'm doing my best to process it. And then once your brain is able to return back to that like rest and digest state, it's able to process, um, it's kind of able to return to safety and to kind of work through that. But here's the thing though with well, okay, there's a couple of things with trauma. Is it in many ways it's very much an individual response. So um, you could have, for example, 1,000 people that go to war and that are on, front line kind of stuff. And while I think it would be good for all of them to go to some sort of talk therapy or get some sort of emotional support, statistics have shown that it's only a percentage. So not 100% of them will come back with PTSD. They might come back with anxiety disorders or other things, but not necessarily PTSD. again, you could have 100 people that are, well, it's in a terrorist attack like 9/11, and there's going to be a percentage of them that are going to be diagnosed with PTSD, but it won't be everybody, even if they were all at ground zero and saw everything happening. So, and it's just kind of a mix of things that go into play when to kind of determine whether or not a person develops PTSD. Getting research has shown getting counseling sooner than later is incredibly helpful. So just talking it out and working in vocalizing those emotions and working through them, it can really help to prevent PTSD. So that's something that a person can do. But also with that kind of trauma, it depends on it depends on other events the person's experienced. It depends on their age. What's traumatic when we're 5 is very different than what's traumatic when we're 15 or 45 or 85. So we tend to, kind of with life experience comes perspective, and usually kind of an ability to cope more effectively. Not all the time, but I would say most of the time. So, yeah, it just kind of depends on the situation. As far as recovering from PTSD, this is going to depend on who you ask. Let me take a sip of my tea. Hold on just a second. I love this time of year because I switch over to chai tea, and I just love chai tea so much. It's so good. Anyways, recovering from PTSD. So there is a kind of, I don't know what you would call it, theory, approach, sect, group of, and none of that is the right word, but it's in that zip code of psychology known as positive psychology. And positive psychology, the kind of basis behind that is, well, let me back up. So most forms of psychological theories or counseling, psychological approaches start off with the kind of premise or the understanding that a person is having this kind of mental disorder, that there's something wrong. So kind of already starting off on a kind of a negative foot, I guess. And so it's already treating the patient like a patient instead of a client. So it's already treating them like, okay, there's something wrong with you. There's something broken that needs to be fixed. And that kind of mentality going into things, especially when mental health is involved, has really come under a lot of criticism, I would say, especially in the past 10 years or so, because there are certain things, like I was saying, certain things can be traumatic. That doesn't necessarily, we don't have to, well, mainstream psychology has kind of come under fire for being seen as pathologizing kind of the human condition. So, again, it's normal to feel sad if you have a loved one that dies. It's normal to feel traumatized after you've experienced the trauma. It's normal to feel anxious if you're starting a new job or you've never been on your own before. These kinds of things. So emotions, uncomfortable emotions, aren't inherently a problem. It's kind of the degree and frequency of them that's a problem. So there's always this ongoing debate with, whether or not the kind of the human condition is pathologized by practitioners and even kind of by the general public. It's kind of viewed as, oh no, if I'm experiencing this uncomfortable emotion, then there's something wrong with me and I need to get this treated. And because it's not normal, or it's not okay to feel bad. And the reality is, no, sometimes it's very normal and appropriate and healthy to feel bad. If something sad has happened, it's normal and healthy to feel sad. If something infuriating has happened, it's normal and healthy and reasonable to feel mad. So what I'm saying, there's a couple different schools of thoughts, I guess is what I'm saying, when it comes to diagnoses in general. So with more traditional forms of like psychotherapy and psychological principles, the whole concept was basically, and this is, I would say, just health in general, is figuring out where a person's baseline is or was. So where is a person starting out? Where are they on a normal day? And then, okay, so if you know their baseline is about here, that let's say their baseline is that they normally sleep for 5 hours a night. And they normally like are very tired during the day, and they, I don't know, kind of have this quote unquote, what's normal for them, like degree of function wise. But the problem with that is, if and this is often the case, if their baseline isn't working for them, or isn't working as optimally as they want it to, then setting the goal of treatment as, okay, you're normally here, then you got robbed, and now instead of sleeping 5 hours a night, you're only sleeping 3 hours a night. So kind of normal treatment tends to be, let's get this person back to their baseline. Well, positive psychology came about and was like, you know what, wait a minute, time out. Maybe we shouldn't be setting the goal of a return to baseline. Maybe that's not a good goal. How about we set for like what's functional, like what's optimal for this person. So the baseline information, that's interesting, but let's not use that as our measurement for kind of the direction that we're heading, or our measurement of what success is for the treatment plan. And that's very groundbreaking in many ways. So positive psychology is more about focusing on where you want to be, and then being in the reality of, okay, these are the struggles that you're having now, and trying to bridge that divide. So that's a big difference. In terms of recovering from PTSD, that in itself is kind of a loaded question, even though I know you didn't mean it to be. And the reason I say it's loaded is, and kind of a trick question, is that this type of thinking of going back to the way we were is, in my opinion, it's very disempowering, because the reality is we never can go back to the way something was, because life is always about change, and it's always about moving forward. Sort of like the saying, you can never, I don't know, this is not exactly the saying, but something along the lines of this, like you can never kind of stick your toe in the same river twice, because the river is always different, because the river is always moving. It's the same with life. So it's setting us up to fail, to think of, oh, can I go back to who I was before this happened? So because that is already setting us up to fail, I prefer just to kind of scrap that whole line of thinking, since it's not helpful. And to think about, okay, if we can't go back to where we were, and we wouldn't want to anyhow, because like I said, things have happened, you've grown, you've changed. You wouldn't want to go back to the way things were before, even though you might think that you do. You can't. You're a changed person with new experiences and new information and new knowledge and new ways of coping and seeing the world. So based on that, you can think about, okay, if I can't go back to who I was, if I can't recover, then who do I want to be? Who do I want to be in this next chapter of my life? What are some of the um, thought processes or behaviors that I want to leave behind in this chapter? What are some that I want to embrace in this next chapter? And making that conscious, concerted effort to shape who you are as a person. And I really do find it helpful to think about living your life in chapters. You are the author of your life. That's very powerful. And you get to decide. You get to decide who the characters are in each chapter, what the story's about, and how long each chapter is, how long a character is around. You know, there's a lot, because you are the author of your own book, and that's just really powerful. So in terms of recovering from PTSD in other ways, like I guess that answer might be better addressed kind of symptom by symptom. So the kind of the main challenges that a lot of people struggle with have to do with uh, um, distrust of other people, distrust of their own perceptions of reality and their own level of discernment. Um, kind of fear, anxiety, fear of, or just feeling very different than everybody else. Anxious that other people are going to hurt us like we've been hurt before, or yeah, kind of having trouble trusting other people, these kinds of things. So I personally feel those I don't know, quote unquote symptoms or shifts, let's call them shifts, personality shifts can be addressed one on one. Or not one on one, not, well, yeah, one on one, but like one by one is what I meant to say, one by one. So, um, yeah. So with that, I do think it's absolutely possible to move forward and into like an empowering new state of being where we're able to learn how to appropriately build trust with other people, to um, form very satisfying relationships with others, and all of that. I think one of the main another main challenge people have with PTSD is beside hypervigilance, nightmares, these kinds of things. And I don't mean to minimize any of that, because that's, you know, deeply problematic. But the other main issue, it has to do, from what I've seen in terms of like relationship trauma, has to do with it can oftentimes cause a shift in a person's attachment style. So we were talking about attachment styles earlier and about avoidant attachment. There's secure, there's 4, 5 really you could make the case for, but there's secure attachment style, and then there's anxious, anxious avoidant, and um, avoidant. And then the 5th one is, which was kind of discovered later on, which is referred to as earned secure. And my 2 cents on that is, I think that there is actually a 6th one that I refer to as mature. So, and I think it is different. I think there's a very big difference between earned, secure, and mature attachment style. I could write a whole paper on that. Maybe someday I will, because I do really do think that there's a big difference there. But um, what people notice, and again, this is normal. If something really traumatic happens, when we learn that a person that we once felt safe around, when we learn that that person is not safe, it's our response is going to be, we become very anxious. And are they going to leave? We want them to stay. We want them to love us. What do I need to do to get you to love me, to get you to stay? It can really create a lot of anxiety in a person, or it can go the opposite, which a person becomes avoidant. It's sort of like that aloof indifference of relationships equal pain. So I'm just going to keep everybody at arm's length, kind of a thing. And again, these are on a continuum. So it's common after relationship trauma for a person to feel more anxious or avoidant. Understanding attachment styles and understanding, I think, is incredibly helpful. And it can kind of be very validating to realize, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. If you think about other mammals, I guess one of the maybe more examples people might be familiar with is that old show that was on TV a while back called The Dog Whisperer with Cesar Millan, and he would work with dogs that had behavioral issues, and they had a wide range. Some of them were terrified, and they wouldn't come out from underneath the couch, and some of them were overly aggressive and attacking anybody that sat next to their owner. And it's the same kind of behavior, or they didn't want to be pet, or they didn't want to, or they would destroy the house when their owner was gone, like these kinds of things. And so he would work on these behaviors. Humans have, and those types of behaviors are often known as protest behaviors. Like the destroying the house, the eating up your owner's shoe, like this kind of stuff. And people have that too. If they don't like what's going on, but they're not able to articulate it, they tend to go into protest behavior of, I'm going to let you know I'm upset with you, kind of a thing. So, so I guess just kind of realizing that this is a thing. It's not unique. It's something that needs to get worked on and kind of worked through, but it doesn't mean that you're forever broken. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that there's something weird going on with you. It's a kind of a trauma response. So knowing attachment style stuff, there's specific exercises that can be done to move a person more towards what's known as that earned secure. So developing, again, Cesar Millan. I know people every now and again say that they have issues with him. I am not an animal expert, so I don't know. But just all of that aside, okay. He has certain things that he does to help animals with different types of behaviors. And one of them, he uses this, it's like co-regulation. So he'll have a pack of animals that are all basically securely attached. They're in a pack. They work together well as a pack. There's this understanding of the hierarchy. Caesar is always like, I am the pack leader, kind of a thing. So there's clear expectations, there's clear boundaries, there's a clear hierarchy there. So those other dogs, when he brings in a dog with behaviors, that pack with that appropriate behavior or that desired behavior helps to co-regulate this other dog. So this other dog can kind of look to them for kind of like role modeling this type of behavior of how to behave, basically. And with attachment styles, it can be very similar to that. So if we're finding if a person's feeling very anxious around others and struggling with dating and this kind of thing, there's a handful of things that a person can do, but learning how to build trust appropriately, meaning slowly and through earned behavior, not just because the person's nice or we have a lot in common with them, but truly through appropriate, consistent behavior over a long enough period of time. That's how we feel emotionally safe with somebody in an appropriate way. So when we start feeling, okay, this person, I've known them long enough, they've been reliable for, for these certain things so far, okay, then we move a little closer to them emotionally. And the more conflict and confrontation and disagreements are handled in a safe and emotionally safe way, that's a big part of emotional safety. So it's not just, is this person nice? Are they friendly? Are they a good listener? It's more significantly is, how do they handle their frustration, their anger, and disagreements? That goes a long way. Are they able, if they're upset, if they're frustrated, if you crossed a boundary with them, or vice versa, are you able to have this conversation with them? Or do they fly into a rage, or do they say nothing, or do they just won't say, if there's a problem, they just won't say anything? That these are signs of emotional unsafety. So so learning how to build emotional safety with other people is huge towards establishing a secure attachment with others. And that ability, that effective communication and emotional maturity really goes hand in hand with that. So if you're able to have this kind of relationship with a friend or with a therapist or a significant other, personally, I think it's important, if that element isn't there, if that effective communication and emotional maturity isn't there, then to me a relationship's not there. It's just people being polite. that's not real. It's being able to get to the next step of being able to be vulnerable with that other person and bringing up, these are my concerns, or these are my feelings, or these are my hopes and dreams and wants and fears, and being able to be taken seriously and treated with dignity and respect. And I don't think that's too much to ask. I really don't. So, but once we're able to practice these skills and build them, and, again, having that with a life coach or therapist is a great way to do it, because hopefully, if they're any good at what they do, then they will be able to have that emotional maturity and that be effective at communication, and be able to role model that of what a healthy relationship looks like. So that was a long answer. I hope you got something out of that. Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Let me scroll up here. UNA says, oh yeah, I love to watch him too. Since I've only had cats, I never had a dog. I am a cat person. So I learned a lot from Cesar Millan. Yeah, I really liked his approach that he trains owners and he rehabilitates dogs. I think that is So well said. And that basically just sums it up. That sums it up. And with pets and with kids, more often than not. So, Bonnie was saying, yeah, watch the animals, you will learn. Yeah, like, truth seeker. I think you might have mentioned this person before. Jackson Galaxy is from the My Cat from Hell show. He's a cat trainer. That's hilarious to me. I don't even know how you would train a cat. Every cat I've ever owned or known, they they are their own superior being and they just don't care. Like they rather do what they want to do. They don't care if you have treats. They don't care. So little fluffy little sociopaths. I just love cats. Okay, let's see. I do not know how to pronounce your first name, so I apologize. Mahavir asks, can you help me understand what projection is? I've watched your video, but I'm still confused. Sure, absolutely. So projection it's a defense mechanism, and uh, it's what any of us can do. Defense mechanisms are part of kind of how we keep our um, ego or sense of self safe. More often than not, they're unconscious, so we're not aware that we're doing it. And projection is when a person experiences uncomfortable thoughts or feelings that we are not comfortable with owning that. And so then we put it on the other person. More often than not, this is unconscious. So, for example, if and somebody gave I think Huffle Mom gave the example in the chat of a very common example is a person who's cheating all of a sudden starts accusing their partner of cheating. Oh, where are you going and why are you doing this? And and the thing is it's unfounded. So if you're being accused of things out of the clear blue for no like reasonable reason, then it's more likely than not projection. So, and that's concerning because that kind of lets you know what the other person's up to. Um, somebody is accusing you of stealing money or of, being jealous of them, and you're not at all. You're like, that's weird. I don't know where that came from. Like, there's a good chance that they're jealous of you. Or if, let me try to think of some other examples. They, I don't know, accuse you of cheating, but really they're the ones that are cheating. Or they accuse you of being angry with them, but really they're the ones that are angry with you. The challenge with projection and with any defenses that are operating at an unconscious level is when something's unconscious, we're not conscious of it, right? So we're not consciously aware of it. And that's a problem in a couple different ways, but it's very difficult to address something. So if a person is going to kind of doing these mental gymnastics to avoid feeling these certain thoughts or feelings, then odds are they're going to continue making attempts to avoid these thoughts or feelings. And so you're just going to see more defense mechanisms kick up. And so this is why when you start being accused of things or somebody's telling you how you feel or what you think, this is kind of a sign that they're projecting. There's a great video that I came across a while back, and I should dig it up and link it. It's a good example of projection. And it's an old, you know, late night mini holes on YouTube form. And it was an old video. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the um, musician, and I don't know. He's an interesting guy. Anyways, his name's Henry Rollins, and he was really big in like the punk scene, um, 80s, 80s and 90s, I guess, and 90s maybe, late 80s, pretty much all of the 90s, and a good chunk of the 2000s. And anyways, so he's older now, but he's still awesome. And he went into a music, some sort of venue, and like a music store or something. And he was doing an interview with this woman. It had nothing to do at all with music or anything. And he was talking to her, he was interviewing her about her, and she did some sort of like political, completely unrelated stuff, political thing. She just was a really neat woman. It helped, um, it kind of dedicated her life to different causes and this kind of thing. And anyways, as they're walking through this, um, I don't know, this music store, wherever they were, there were some teenagers or like early 20 somethings in the back, and they were yelling at him. But they were like, "Hey, Henry, like, hey, you're awesome. Hey, what's going on?" And he interpreted that as that they were making fun of him, and that they thought he was old, and that they thought he was washed up, and um, that they were heckling him. And so he goes over and he confronts these, young 20 somethings, and they all have this look on their face like, "What are you talking about?" And it seemed to me that they were like, "No, we actually, like, we're excited to see you. We think you're cool." Um, so I think that was a good example of projection. So he was having these feelings of, oh, he's old, he's irrelevant, he's washed up, he's all these things, and these kids were simply excited to see him, and he put all that on them, and in my opinion, completely misread that whole situation because of that. That's the only example I've been able to come across in like video format, which I think can be the most helpful, kind of seeing these things play out. I don't know if anybody has any other um, videos you've seen of this kind of stuff. Let me know. Let me scroll. Yeah, Jack was saying he was the lead singer for Black Flag. Yes, and then the Rollins band. Um, yeah, he does like spoken word tour stuff now. I don't know if he's still tours like musically, but I know he's been, he's written several books. Um, yeah, he's a very talented guy. Oh, okay, thank you. Jack says Craig had mentioned that he feels so alone and has a gut feeling that the narcissist in his life is going to get him murdered. Yikes. How long, Craig, I don't even know if you're still here. If you are, how long have you been feeling this way? And have you, um, I guess, what are you doing in order to keep yourself safe? And what do you think would help keep you safe? Let me scroll up here. Okay, Jack says, Dana, we need your help. You missed a message that we're trying to get to you. Was that the message, Jack, that I just from Craig? Um, let's see, scrolling. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes, that was the concern. Okay, great. Thank you, Jack. Thank you guys for trying to get my attention with that. Um, yeah. Oh, okay, Craig. Good. You're still here. I guess, yeah, how long has this been going on for? And um, yeah, that is really scary. So, what, I guess, yeah, what do you think would help? Situations like this, yeah, and Jack was saying, yeah, we need more context on narcissists that threaten murder. Has this person directly threatened you, or you just think that there's a very likely chance that, um, kind of based on previous behavior, that they would resort to something like that? Here's the thing. Okay, he said, okay, yeah, I've been getting death threats since 2016. Then, okay, so here's my honest advice with that. I would move, and I would move uh, to a different zip code. And I know it's not right, and I know it's not fair, and I know it costs money, and I know that there's a pandemic going on, and I know um, it's frustrating, and not, all the emotions that go along with uprooting your life because of somebody else who's threatening this kind of stuff. But I would strongly consider it. It's um, and I would look at it as an investment in your mental health. Okay, this person says, if I leave the relationship, they will kill me. I'm feeling trapped in the abusive relationship. Okay. Okay. So if you're still in the relationship and they've said things like this, then I would, um, are you here in the United States? Okay. I'm going to just answer and I'm going to make some assumptions. I'm going to assume that you're here in the United States. Okay. So set me straight if that's not the case. Um, I would contact a local domestic violence agency. Um, and okay, you are here in the United States. Good. Let them know what's going on. And even though you are a guy, a lot of domestic violence agencies, especially nowadays, have expanded the types of services they offer to include men. So while they might not be able to have you stay in the shelter. Most shelters are just women only. They might be able to help place you in like a long-term stay, like motel or hotel kind of a place. So it's worth a call. They can also help walk you through, kind of coming up with an escape plan and a safety plan for how to leave, and sometimes uh, even help with relocating to a different area. So a lot of it's going to depend on which state you're in, and kind of how funding wise, how stable they are. And I mean, it has been done before. Um, People that are truly in danger and that they want to, move across the country or something, that, that has been done. So, um, in terms of fake accounts and making accusations that aren't true, uh, I guess I wouldn't worry about that. My number one priority would be safety. So, reaching out for help. Domestic violence agency is going to be probably your best bet because they have a lot of the resources. So I would start there. And if you aren't able to get any of like the resources or support, um, call some other domestic violence agencies in your area. And that's the same thing. Women have the same challenge too. You can, and a lot of it is because shelters tend to really rely on volunteers, and some of them, are brand new and haven't really been trained, and some of them just don't know, and some of them, like there's just kind of a wide mix of people. So if you're not getting the answer that you're looking for, you could also ask to maybe speak to the director or the manager and say, this is your situation, and you're just really scared and wanting to know what advice they have with how to proceed. So right. Helpful mom, that is well said. She says, yeah, and Craig, they can't kill you if they don't know where you live. Exactly. So, sometimes it does mean being willing to kind of start over in another city and another state, and then um, being very did uh, diligent and intentional about the kind of your online presence, and in terms of getting mail, things like that, setting up a post office box, so your physical address isn't out there. um, yeah, like these kinds of things. Putting your physical address, doing a PO box on your checks, if you have checks, if people still even write checks, um, it, these kinds of things. So uh, yeah. And then periodically Googling yourself to see what information does come up. Okay. Monica asked, Dana, could you speak more on future faking? And how is it that we keep getting reeled in again and again? Do they exploit some vulnerability that we have? Yeah, great question. And yes. So here's the thing with vulnerabilities is we all have them. They're not necessarily a bad thing. It's part of being human. So trying to get rid of all of our vulnerabilities is an exercise in futility, and frankly, it would be damaging to us in the long run. So, and our vulnerabilities change. They change as we grow and change throughout life. So what one person's, let's say if a person's vulnerability when they're 16 is that they're naive, when they're 86, it might be that they're lonely and they're no longer naive. So it's good for us to check in with ourselves, and this can be very difficult. Um, again, it's always easier to see the issues in other people clearly. Like it really, really is. And seeing our vulnerabilities clearly is no exception to that. So it can be very challenging for us uh, to acknowledge, yeah, okay, this is what I'm struggling with. The more honest we can be with ourselves, the kind of the better prepared we can live in reality and react and respond to it. So um, if we keep getting reeled in time and time again by people that are that are saying everything that we want to hear, then that kind of tends to point to being lonely, and um, yeah, wanting the fantasy of the relationship that we hope to have with this person. So this is how people get roped into all kinds of problematic situations, scams of all kinds. They lose their life savings. They, um, get tangled up with online predators, or abusive people, or um, what have you. Anybody that's kind of promising them what they want. Oh, you're gonna, get rich quick on this, or you're gonna meet the man or woman of your dreams if you do this, or um, I will be the man or woman of your dreams if you just give me another chance. These kinds of things, they're feeding into that fantasy that we have. And so the solution to that is to realize that that's what's happening, and to look at that person's behavior and not just what they're saying, and not look at short bursts of um, a person saying or doing everything we want as some sort of sign of changed behavior, or that fantasy we want is actually going to happen. So getting crystal clear with yourself about the relationship that you're actually in, and separating out the relationship that you hope it that it once was, or that you hoped it could someday be. This also helps with moving forward, um, with grieving the loss of this relationship. I know from personal experience, realizing, oh my gosh, I did not love this person. I loved who they pretended to be. And frankly, anybody would have loved that person. That person was awesome, but that's not who they were. So, um, the relationship that I thought we had was amazing. That's not the relationship that we really had. That was all a lie, or enough of it was a lie to just sour the whole thing. Um, so yeah, getting clear with yourself, and maybe it's worth kind of writing this out, and doing an exercise with yourself of, okay, when you left the relationship, or the relationship ended, why? Why did it end? Why did you leave that time? And then what did they say to reel you back in? And this way, it's in black and white, it's in front of you. And you can see, oh my gosh, they've been promising to stop raging at me, or to stop drinking, or to stop whatever it is. This is like the 8th time now, or the 18th time, or the 88th time. This is an ongoing pattern every single time. Or 9 out of the 10 times, it's some sort of excuse. This time is going to be different. This time I'm going to get help. I'm going to get into counseling. I'm going to go to AA. I'm going to, I'll be better. I'll be patient. Be this. I'll be that. Writing this down and then reading through it. Like, you've been down this road before. If they keep reeling you in, you keep going down the same road before. So then it's about figuring out why. What are the hooks that have you? So yeah, getting some questions clear in your own mind will really help. Let's see. Monica was saying, could triangulation be used simultaneously alongside future faking? So my ex keeps using his ex-wife and his story to induce insecurity in me. It's making me feel small. Yeah, absolutely. Generally, when there's dysfunctional behavior afoot, it's very rarely just one thing. It tends to it tends to be a lot. So if you see, if there's, it's never just like quote unquote just cheating or just future faking or just projection. Like these things, what you're seeing is the tip of the iceberg. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they think, oh, well, I'll just melt the iceberg. And then at the very bottom, once all of that ice is melted, then we'll have that functional behavior. Underneath all of this rough exterior, this rough, icy exterior, there's this good behavior buried deep down inside. And that's not the case. That good behavior is something that takes time and practice, and it's learned, and so if they don't have it down by now, then that's not a partner, that's a massive project that you're undertaking. And so the question is, I would encourage you to kind of flip around what you were saying. So yes, triangulation can absolutely be used alongside future faking, and so can like denial and blame and shame and projection and all kinds of other things. But the most helpful question, I put it that way, is to ask yourself, okay, if he's your ex, then why is he still playing this much of an active role in your life? And I also want to point out that this insecurity that's being that he's kind of poking at within you, this only induces insecurity if you internalize what he's saying. Once you see it, his behavior, as provoking, as triangulation, it's seeing the wizard behind the curtain. Then it loses a lot of that. It still might kind of hurt your feelings, but if you're able to see it for the manipulation tactic that it is, it tends to not even really do that. It's sort of like when a little kid really wants to get their way, right? And you're not giving them what they want. And they say, oh, well, you're a mean mommy. I hate you. Sarah's mom's so much better than you. I'm going to run away and live with Sarah. You don't love me. Do you see? There's like a handful of like manipulation tactics in just those few sentences there. But when a little kid says it, we're able to realize they don't mean what they're saying. They're saying things intentionally to be manipulative, to get you to cave in and give them what they want. So we understand, okay, they're upset because they're not getting their way. And so they're just throwing everything, they're kitchen sinking it. They're just throwing everything they've got at it to get you to cave in. Don't take it personally. It's the same thing with manipulative people in general. You just don't take it personally. So yeah, he might be saying, oh, my ex, gosh, she was so attractive, and she was like a 9. She was just a knockout. She was amazing in bed, and she was so good to me and cooked and clean. I never had to ask her for anything. Man, I loved being married to her. I really messed that one up. Right. Or I never had these issues with my ex. Like she was so amazing, blah, 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 kind of a thing. And it's designed to kind of light a fire under you to get you to do something different. But, I don't know, just kind of making it that new point of you don't need to suffer fools. Just suffer no fools. There's a lot of kind of wisdom in that saying. Anybody that's, I guess if you see it as a person who doesn't have I guess when you kind of realize the different elements that go into having a functional relationship with somebody, like these are non-negotiables. Like these have to be there. It's sort of like ingredients for making a cake. Certain things change the cake, right? Like you can add chocolate chips into the mix, or you can add vanilla flavoring, or you can add raisins or whatever it might be. Those are not necessities. Those are extras. The basics, the I don't know, tells you how often I bake, right? The flour, the sugar, the eggs or the egg substitute, all of this stuff, this kind of stuff, these are the necessities. You need these in order to have a cake. If you're missing one, you don't have a cake. You have probably a big doughy mess. You might have bread. You might have, I don't know, like panini, like or something else that comes out of the oven, but you're not going to have a cake. And when we see relationships like that, and we realize that these ingredients of emotional maturity, effective communication, the ability to be team oriented and solutions focused, and to be able to establish emotional safety, like these are the non-negotiables. Without this, there is no relationship, and it really does boil down to that. And we're not looking for perfection, but we're looking for functional amounts of each. So if it's not even there, if this person, because obviously he's showing you that he's not emotionally safe, he's future faking. That's different than future planning. Right? Future plans involve some sort of basis in reality. Future faking doesn't. Future faking is just saying words. Triangulation is not effective communication. It's manipulation. And there's a difference between being in like a manipulationship and being in an actual relationship. In a relationship, there's that relational ability between two people, and that requires emotional safety. In a manipulationship, it's manipulation, and there is no sincere like relation, relations between two people. It's all about, I'm going to try to get you to do what I want in very covert type ways. You can't. That is not a functional. That's a crazy making relationship. So, yeah. Yeah, right. UNA was saying raisins, LOL. Okay, I was thinking of a carrot cake in justification of my raisin answer. Butterfly says, if it was me, I would just ask the simple question, well, hell, if your ex was so amazing, then why are you not still with this perfection? LOL. Yeah. And frankly, I bet his ex has a ton of stories and that he didn't treat her all that well either. So, yeah, this idolization of her it's all part of it. I mean, all of this, it's just so deeply dysfunctional. So seeing it for what it is. Mahavir asked, do you do private consultation? I don't, but I do this live stream pretty much every Wednesday night. And we finally got a system for emails. So if you have a question that you would like for me to answer, and I can answer it anonymously live, you can email it to me at deardana@thriveafterabuse.com. So, yeah. So please send a question and just let me know what name you want me to say on the air, and just change any significant details to make it to value any privacy or concerns that you might have. Cha-cha-cha. Let's see. Okay, well, I think okay, yes, we are going to be way over. Um, Monica asked real quick, Dana, I want to read some of your books. Where can I get those books? Do you have any? You can get um, my books either, you can request them at your local library, which I encourage you guys to do that, so then that way other people can find them as well. You can also request my audiobooks at your local library too. If you My stuff's on Audible, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Yeah, across the internet. And I don't know if I mentioned this. See, I really don't like marketing or advertising or mentioning things. I have this weird thing. I put out books and I just don't tell people. Um, so yes, so I will mention this one. This is my latest book. It's been out for I don't even know, a few months now, but I just haven't really mentioned it because I don't know, I just get nervous about it. But anyways, my latest one is called Dear Dana, and this is the book, and it's frequently asked questions about dating after narcissistic abuse. And it's specifically the most common questions. It's written in a kind of a Dear Abby type format. Um, let's see, how many questions? 36. 36 questions in all. And this is, I'm experimenting with this format. So I think it can kind of be easier to chunk this information down into topic by topic and seeing how it's more relatable, I guess. So let me know kind of what you think of this format, and yeah, and I might do some more books written in this format. It's very, very interesting. So these questions are obviously changed to protect privacy, but they're just in the spirit of questions that have been asked over time. And probably my most well, you can find all my books by looking up Dana Morningstar. Out of the Fog is probably the most popular book. The Narcissist's Playbook is this second most popular. It might be number one most popular. Let me see right now. This is the cover for the Narcissist's Playbook. Get that in the. This is, I really like this book. So, especially the last part of it has to do with kind of how to protect yourself and understanding the cycle of change and just all of it, breaking free from manipulation kind of once and for all. So Jack asks, hey Dana, do you have a new email address then? You have Dear Dana at thriveafterabuse.com, not Dana at thriveafterabuse.com. Both of those are active email addresses for questions. I mean, it's fine. You can send one at either place. We're trying to get people to use the Dear Dana one as questions for a potential live stream, because what has happened is people will send me questions at Dana at Thrive After Abuse, but then I really, I want to obviously make sure, did you mean for me to read this question on the live stream, or did you want a private answer? I'm trying to get away from doing private answers because it's very time consuming. It's, I think, more benefit to discuss a question in a more general way on air so other people can chime in and, so we can just open up the discussion that way. So yeah, it's a whole thing. But the Dear Dana at thriveafterabuse.com is the more desired email address to send questions to. Okay, so with that said, we are over on time. I apologize, but we will do a guided meditation. So yeah, so let's take some time, find a spot that is comfortable, whether that is seated or laying down, and allow yourself to just settle into the present moment. And you can either soften your gaze or close your eyes, whatever's the most comfortable for you. And let's just take some time to breathe. And being here in the moment. Releasing as much of the anxiety and stress as we can. And perhaps visualizing it as like rocks in a backpack. All of that stress and anxiety is rocks in a backpack. And you can set that backpack down in the corner, somewhere where if it feels comfortable for you, where you can still see it. Or if you prefer, you can visualize putting it in the closet or under the bed, wherever you would like. But noticing the difference of how much lighter you feel after having set all of that stress and anxiety down. Noticing how heavy that backpack was. And it helps to get comfortable and get to notice uh, how it feels when you pick up that backpack full of rocks and what it feels like when you set it down, so that you can do this practice whenever you would like. And this can be particularly helpful if you're wanting to take some time and just unwind or go to bed or watch a movie or just let your mind unwind and relax. And putting this anxiety down and telling yourself you know exactly where it is. And this doesn't mean that you're shirking responsibility or being irresponsible or uh, reckless or anything like that. You're just taking a break. And it's important to take breaks. And for the rest of this meditation or for the rest of the time that you're wanting to set that anxiety down, just realize, it's okay. You're setting it down. You're going to go do something else for a while. And that those concerns they're safe. They're over in the corner in the backpack. And you can address them when you're able to address them, but now is not the time. Now is the time to just relax and unwind. And making time to relax and unwind or to have fun. These are all very important. These are just as important for your emotional health as brushing your teeth or eating balanced meals as for your physical health. So allowing yourself to be settled into this present moment and just breathe easily and effortlessly in through your nose and out through your mouth. Feeling your body become heavier with each passing breath as you settle into the present moment. Realizing that there is so much that is good and right about this present moment, and that there is so much that is good and right about you, and that you are doing so many things that are good and right, that you've come a long way, and allowing yourself to acknowledge that and visualizing giving yourself a big hug for everything that you've been through, for everything that you're going through, for all of the strength that you've had. You've been so strong for so long. You really have. Just acknowledging everything, all of these wonderful traits within you, your dedication to personal growth, kind of your newfound um, self-love, and maybe for the first time ever, of really allowing yourself to be a priority in your life, realizing that you matter, that you are worth protecting, and that having boundaries and standards and deal breakers um, is reasonable and healthy and absolutely allowed for you and for anybody. And continuing to breathe. And with each breath, sending that breath further down, down deep into the bases of your lungs, feeling your chest easily and effortlessly rise and fall with each breath. Now allowing that breath to travel further down into your abdomen, noticing your whole torso rise and fall easily and effortlessly with each breath. Now sending that breath as far down your legs as you can, as far down your arms as you can. Until you can feel it in the tips of your fingers and in the tips of your toes. Noticing how heavy, yet simultaneously how light your body feels with each breath as your whole body rises and falls easily and effortlessly. In this moment, you are safe. And in this moment, you are secure. You are capable. And you are wise. You are strong. You're very aware of so many things. You have so many things that are good and right about you. And noticing how you feel in this moment, that feeling of contentment in the present moment. And what it feels like to just simply be, to not be doing or planning or thinking or stressing, just simply being here in this moment. When you're ready, come on back and open your eyes. Okay, good deal. So, welcome back. And yes, real quick, Soft Breezy Day asked Dana, could you post your live stream times on your website or in the video description? They should be in both, but I will double check. So, okay, wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much for being here and uh, just for being yourselves and for asking really great questions. And I hope to see you next week. And as always, just lots of love to you guys. You are not alone and you are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care and have just a beautiful rest of your week. Okay, good night.